A couple of weeks ago, Joe and I were having a conversation, and Joe had brought up this guy, Jamal Khashoggi. Now, I didn't know who Jamal Khashoggi was at the time. I had heard the story, but obviously I'm not going to remember a minor blip in the news for pretty much a dissident that nobody really talked about for longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Most people don't. And I thought it was interesting. So I started looking up Jamal Khashoggi and came across a bunch of different articles, including one for his uncle, Adnan Khashoggi, who was an arms dealer, and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jamal Khashoggi doesn't have much to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but the Khashoggi family apparently does. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that later. So Jamal Khashoggi is a Saudi dissident. He was a journalist for the Washington Post and former general manager and editor-in-chief at Al Arab News Channel. He was killed on October 2nd, 2018 at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. It was perpetrated by agents of the Saudi Arabian government. The exact cause of his death is unknown since his body has not been located or examined, which makes me think that maybe he's not dead and that it's all a ruse. It was something set up to get him the fuck out of the country, you know? Mm-hmm. Because he's been wanted by the country, right? And him getting political asylum and whatever else was more important than anything. So if there's no body, it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Government officials of several countries, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, believe Khashoggi was murdered. Turkey in particular believes it was premeditated murder, and anonymous Saudi officials have admitted that agents affiliated with the Saudi government killed him. Khashoggi entered the consulate in order to obtain documents related to the marriage he and his fiancée were planning. Because no security camera footage of him exiting the building could be found, he was declared a missing person. Interesting. Amid news reports claiming that he had been assassinated and dismembered inside the consulate. When the disappearance of Khashoggi was first reported by the news media, Saudi Arabia claimed he had left the consulate and denied having any knowledge about his fate. Can't read today. Turkish media published evidence suggesting that Khashoggi never came out of the consulate. Saudi Arabia subsequently denied any involvement in his disappearance.
You know, I remember watching this for a little while because I believe I still had a PlayStation View at the time. So I was watching a little bit of the news, and I remember them showing the footage of him going into the consulate, and then there was footage of a guy that had been rumored to be a toughie for them for Saudi Arabia, the embassy, and that he walked out sometime within an hour or so after Khashoggi showed up there, and it was very suspicious looking.
You're covered in blood.
Yeah, like he just needed some air for a minute, kind of thing.
He goes out for a cigarette, holding his knife, yeah. Wiping it on his pants,
or hides it in a little flower pot.
Yeah, nobody saw me.
I know nothing.
The international community called for accountability of those responsible for the killing and more clarity on the case from the Saudi authorities. Meanwhile, the Turkish authorities reported various findings to news media from the ongoing investigation of the case that refuted Saudi claims. Saudi Arabia was placed under unprecedented scrutiny and economic and political pressure from the international community to disclose the facts. An inspection of the consulate by Saudi and Turkish police took place on the 15th of October. Turkish prosecutors report they found evidence of tampering during the inspection and evidence that supported the belief that Khashoggi had been killed. 18 days later, the Saudi government changed their position from no involvement and admitted that Khashoggi died inside the consulate due to strangulation after an argument and fistfight. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister called it a rogue operation. 18 Saudis were arrested by authorities, including the team of 15 operatives, which an anonymous Saudi official claimed General Ahmad Asiri sent to confront Khashoggi and, if necessary, detain him for return to Saudi Arabia. On the 19th of October, the Saudi prosecutor stated that the Saudi-Turkey joint team of investigators found evidence indicating the suspects acted with premeditated intent. The Saudi royal family has denied ordering or sanctioning the killing. On the 31st of October in 2018, Istanbul's chief prosecutor released a statement stating that Khashoggi had been strangled as soon as he entered the consulate building and that his body was dismembered and disposed of. On the 15th of November, the Saudi prosecutor's office said 11 Saudi nationals had been indicted and charged with murdering Khashoggi and that 5 of them could face the death penalty. since it had been determined that they were directly involved in ordering and executing the crime. It alleged that shortly after Khashoggi entered the consulate in Istanbul, he was bound and injected with a fatal sedative overdose. His body was dismembered and removed from the consulate by 5 suspects and given to a local collaborator for disposal. Saudi officials continued to deny that Saudi royal family was involved in ordering or sanctioning the killing. If you continue to deny something, that means that it happened.
Yeah.
Stop denying things. Just no comment. Turkish officials released an audio recording of Khashoggi's killing that they alleged contained evidence that Khashoggi had been assassinated on the orders of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Several days later, on November 16th, Central Intelligence Agency members who internally analyzed multiple sources of intelligence concluded that Mohammed bin Salman ordered Khashoggi's assassination. On November 20th, Donald Trump disputed the CIA assessment and stated that the investigation into Khashoggi's death had to continue. Mohammed bin Salman denied that he had ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, but said he bears all responsibility because it happened under his watch.
So he's like he half owned it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really sorry about that. But
whoopsie.
Yeah. Khashoggi was a Saudi journalist, author, and former general manager and editor-in-chief of Al Arab News, the Al Arab News channel. He also served as auditor for the Saudi newspaper Al Watan.
Editor. You said auditor.
Yes, I'm sorry, editor. Turning it into a platform for Saudi progressives. Khashoggi fled Saudi Arabia in June of 2017, went into self-imposed exile in the U.S. He became a frequent contributor to publications like the Washington Post's Global Opinion section and continued to criticize Saudi government from afar. He'd been sharply critical of Saudi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the country's King Salman of Saudi Arabia. He also opposed the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. He said the government banned me from Twitter when I cautioned against an overly enthusiastic embrace of then-President-elect Donald Trump. In September 2017, the Washington Post published its first column by Khashoggi, in which he criticized the prince and the kingdom's direction and advocated for reform for his country. Once Khashoggi's collaboration with the Washington Post started, he was harassed via Twitter by pro-regime bot accounts commonly known as electronic flies. The Lord of the Flies, the man who ran social media for Crown Prince Mohammed, was Saud al-Qahtani. The Crown Prince Mohammed ordered a zero-tolerance campaign against dissidents, spearheaded by Qahtani, who was implicated in the murder of Khashoggi. And just before his assassination, Khashoggi was launching projects to combat online abuse in an attempt to consolidate the opposition and accused Crown Prince Mohammed of mismanaging the Saudi Arabian kingdom. Khashoggi collaborated with Omar Abdulaziz, one of the most visible, I fucking can't read this with this stupid thing in the way, one of the most visible public critics of the Saudi Arabian regime abroad, who would receive asylum in Canada on a range of projects. One project was named Gaish al-Nal, Army of the Bees, or the Bees Army. They wanted to create a counterpoint to the regime's propaganda machine, a network of pro-democracy activists who would post and amplify one another's messages about Saudi political issues.
We are the bee's knees.
That's Russian.
I suck. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Abdulaziz said they wanted to talk about dissidents. Now, I remember Abdulaziz talking about this stuff. They want to talk about dissidents, the political prisoners, freedom of speech, human rights, and make people aware of what's really happening. The Bee movement should also provide cybersecurity to people living in Saudi Arabia and other oppressive regimes in the Middle East in need of a safe way to express themselves. As Khashoggi wrote in his last posthumously published column, he was of the opinion that what the Arab world needs most is free expression. See, Khashoggi and Abdulaziz were working on a short film showing how the Saudi leadership was dividing the country, a website tracking human rights, and the new foundation, Democracy for the Arab World Now, Dawn, Khashoggi was forming. Kind of a weird sentence. They tried to keep their work secret from Saudi persecution. In late September 2018, Khashoggi met with friends in London to discuss his plans. In summer 2018, Abdulaziz's cell phone was infected with a surveillance tool. This was first revealed in the 1st of October 2018 in a detailed forensic report by Citizen Lab. And Citizen Lab is a University of Toronto project that investigates digital espionage against civil society. Citizen Lab concluded with a high degree of confidence that his cell phone was successfully targeted with NSO Group's Pegasus spyware and attributed this infection to an operator linked to Saudi Arabia's government and security services. NSO's Pegasus, of which KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has emerged as one of its biggest operators, is one of the most advanced spyware tools available. It is designed to infect cell phones without being detected. Among other known cases, KSA is believed to have used NSO software to target London-based Saudi dissident Yahya Assiri, a former Royal Saudi Air Force officer, founder the human rights organization ALQST, and Amnesty International researcher. Through their sophisticated spyware attack on Abdulaziz's phone, the Saudi regime would have had a direct line into Khashoggi's private thoughts and access to hours of conversation between the two men. Abdulaziz recalled Jamal was very polite in public, but in private he spoke more freely. He was very, very critical of the crown prince. On the 21st of September, just 11 days before Khashoggi was murdered, he made a declaration of support for the bees movement using the bees first hashtag, "What do you know about bees?" He tweeted, "They love their home country and defend it with truth and rights." Mark Owen Jones, an assistant professor at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha, who researched Arab propaganda and has monitored Saudi Twitter bots for 2 years, said he had seen a massive surge in pro-regime Twitter activity and in the creation of troll accounts since Khashoggi went missing. There was such a huge spike in October in bot accounts and the use of hashtags praising the crown prince. It's absurd. After Khashoggi's assassination, the Saudi cyber operations were the focus of global scrutiny. The government of Canada started an investigation into those malicious cyber attacks. And last year, about this time, Omar Abdulaziz granted CNN access to his text messages with Jamal, where the two discussed their sharp criticism and political opposition to Mohammed bin Salman. Abdulaziz filed a lawsuit against an Israeli company, NSO Group Technologies, that allowed his smartphone to be taken over and his communications to be spied on by the Saudi regime.
You know, I am in no way saying he deserved this or anything, but if you talk shit very vocally about the Saudi prince and the Saudi king, and you know that they've put pretty much a fatwa on you, why the fuck would you ever go near anything related to Saudi Arabia ever again? You know, even going to an embassy or a consulate or whatever in Turkey, you know, he's still walking onto Saudi Arabian property, and he knows that they don't like him, and they take dissidents very seriously. I remember he did articles and stuff about problems with Saudi Arabia. From news reports I'm remembering from the time, he was aware that they did not like him. They did not want him, you know, to be back. They did not want him to be a citizen anymore. You know, I know this is coming from a point of ignorance, but when it's Middle East related, those people when they're fucking against somebody, they're serious about it. So him going anywhere near there is just, it's unfathomable to me that he would even go, you know, to Turkey, anywhere near that place, because then look what happened.
No, I'm right there with you. Why the fuck would you go back to? Now I know a couple of people that have done that have gone back and went in to their own country under the cover of night, to grab family and then get them the fuck out of there and cross the border again.
I can understand that. It's a huge risk, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah, but why would you go? Just as you said, why the fuck would you go back there and then go into the Saudi Arabian consulate, knowing that your country fucking hates you?
It's like he just delivered himself, you know, right to him. You know, and it was just because he wanted to get a marriage license or something, or you know, be able to marry his fiance.
Yeah, something like that.
You know, I don't know. You know what? I don't live in that guy's world, I don't live in the guy's world that doesn't exist anymore. But
yeah, well, this is even worse. October of 2018, the U.S. intelligence intercepted communications of Saudi officials discussing a plan ordered by the Crown Prince bin Salman to capture Khashoggi from his home in Virginia. The intercepted communications were regarded as significant because Khashoggi had bought a home in McLean, Virginia, where he lived after fleeing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Khashoggi had obtained an O visa, also known as the Genius Visa, that other individuals of extraordinary ability and achievement in the science, arts, education, and other fields, and are recognized internationally, whatever. And he had applied for permanent residency status, and 3 of his children were U.S. citizens. As a legal resident of the United States, Khashoggi was entitled to protection under A directive adopted in 2015, the U.S. intelligence community had a duty to warn people, including those who were not U.S. citizens who are at risk of being kidnapped or killed. The directive was a central aspect of the conversation about the U.S.'s response to Khashoggi's disappearance. Khashoggi applied for U.S. citizenship when it was offered, and he accepted a position as a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. It's called the Wilson Center, which is in Washington, D.C. According to NSA officials, the White House was warned of this threat through official intelligence channels. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence... God damn it, I can't fucking talk tonight. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, declined to comment on why Khashoggi was not warned. Daniel Ray Coates is an American politician and former diplomat. 55 members of Congress demanded in a letter clarity from DNI Dan Coates on what the intelligence community knew about the risk Khashoggi faced before his disappearance and whether American officials attempted to notify him that his life was in danger. In the letter, they sought insight into everything the NSA knows about phone calls and emails from Saudi officials. The Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University filed a lawsuit against 5 U.S. intelligence services seeking immediate release of records concerning U.S. intelligence agencies' compliance or noncompliance with their duty to warn reporter Jamal Khashoggi of threats to his life or liberty. Committee to Protect Journalists joined the legal effort. Over the year 2017, the House of Saud appealed to Khashoggi to return to Riyadh and resume his services as a media advisor to the royal court. He declined and feared that it was a ruse and that upon returning, he would be imprisoned or worse. Khashoggi met with Crown Prince Mohammed's brother, Prince Khalid, at the Saudi embassy, no relation to Khalid the entertainer, or DJ Khaled.
Yeah.
In early 2018 or late 2017, in September 2018, Khashoggi visited the Saudi embassy in Washington and retrieved paperwork for his pending marriage to his Turkish fiancée, Hatice Cengiz. He tried to complete everything in the U.S., but was instead lured to the Saudi Arabian consulate in Turkey, where his fiancée lived. Khashoggi's first visit to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul was on the 20th of September. He showed up unannounced, having divorced his wife, who remained in Saudi Arabia. He went to the consulate to obtain a document certifying that he was no longer married so he could marry his Turkish fiancée. With that visit, he sought assurances about his safety from friends in the U.S. and instructed his fiancée to contact Turkish authorities if he failed to emerge. He received a warm welcome from officials and was told to return to the consulate on the 2nd of October.
It sounds like Kim Jong-un.
He was pleased with their nice treatment and hospitality. On the 29th of September, Khashoggi traveled to London and spoke at a conference. On October 1st, Khashoggi returned to Istanbul, and he told a friend that he was worried about being kidnapped and sent back to KSA. At 4:30, a 3-person Saudi team arrived in Istanbul on a scheduled flight, checked into their hotels, then visited the consulate. According to President Erdogan, another group of officials from the consulate traveled to a forest in Istanbul's outskirts and to the nearby city of Yalova on a reconnaissance trip. Erdogan said a roadmap to kill Khashoggi was devised in Saudi Arabia during this time. In the night of October 2nd, a 15-member group arrived from Riyadh on 2 private Gulfstream jets. October 2nd, CCTV showed the suspected agents entering the consulate around noon. Khashoggi arrived about an hour later, accompanied by his fiancée Cengiz, whom he entrusted with 2 cell phones while she waited outside for him. He entered the consulate at around 1 p.m. as he had not come up by 4. Even though the working hours of the consulate were until 3:30, Cengiz contacted the authorities, phoning Khashoggi's friend Yazin Aktay, an advisor to President Erdogan, and reported him missing, and the police then started an investigation. The Saudi government said that he had left the consulate via a back entrance. The Turkish government...
Oh, he went out the back.
Even though you were sitting out front waiting for him, and he told you to wait here, the Turkish government first said he was still inside, and his fiancée and friends said that he was missing.
That's love right there, man. He's willing to go to that shit, those lengths, to marry her. Damn.
Yep. The Turkish authorities have claimed that security footage of the day of the incident was removed from the consulate and that Turkish consulate staff were abruptly told to take a holiday on the day Khashoggi disappeared while inside the building.
Oops. Camera wasn't working that day.
It broke. Everybody was on vacation.
Bad tape.
Yeah. Turkish police investigators told the media that the recordings from the security camera did not show any evidence of Khashoggi leaving the consulate. A security camera was located outside the consulate's front, which showed him entering but not leaving, while another installed at a preschool opposite the rear entrance of the consulate did not show him leaving. The disappearance presented Turkish officials with a sharp diplomatic challenge. Jamal Shayal reported Turkish authorities were trying to walk a fine line so as not to damage the Turkish-Saudi relationship. There was an attempt by the Turkish government to try to find a way out of this, whereby there isn't a full collapse of diplomatic relations, at least a temporary freeze between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Because if indeed Turkish authorities can prove unequivocally that Saudi agents essentially murdered a journalist inside the consulate in Istanbul, it would require some sort of strong reaction. Analysts have suggested that Khashoggi may have been considered especially dangerous by the Saudi leadership because he was a longtime dissident, but rather not because he was a longtime dissident, but rather a pillar of Saudi establishment who had been close to its ruling circles for decades, had worked as an editor at Saudi news outlets, and had been an advisor to former Saudi intelligence chief Turki bin Faisal al Saud. So they believe that Khashoggi was tortured and killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul by a 15-member team brought in from Saudi Arabia. One anonymous source claimed that the dead body was cut into pieces and quietly moved out of the consulate, and that all of this was videotaped to prove the mission had been accomplished and the tape was taken out of the country. Middle East Eye, which is a London-based online news outlet covering events in the Middle East, cited an anonymous Saudi who said the Tiger Squad brought Khashoggi's fingers to Mohammed in Riyadh as other evidence that the mission was successful. On October 7th, the Turkish officials pledged to release evidence showing that Khashoggi was killed. Aktay initially said he believed Khashoggi had been killed in the consulate, but on 10th of October, he claimed that the Saudi state is not blamed here, something that a journalist for The Guardian saw as Turkey trying not to harm lucrative trade ties and a delicate regional relationship with Saudi Arabia. Turkey then claimed to have audio and video evidence of the killing occurred inside the consulate. President Donald Trump said the United States had asked Turkey for the recordings. According to people familiar with the matter, the audio was shared with CIA agents, although they declined to comment. On October 15th, CNN reported that Saudi Arabia was about to admit to the killing, but would claim it was an interrogation gone bad, as opposed to targeted death squad killing. The claim drew criticism from some, considering that Khashoggi was reportedly dismembered and that his killing was allegedly premeditated, and circumstances including the arrival and departure of a team of 15, including forensic specialists presumed to have been present to hide evidence of the crime on the same day. The next day, Middle East Eye reported that according to an anonymous Turkish result, the killing took about 7 minutes, and forensic specialist Salah Mohammed al-Tubaigi, who had brought along a bone saw, cut Khashoggi's body into pieces while Khashoggi was still alive, as he and his colleagues listened to music. The source further claimed that Khashoggi was dragged from Consul General Mohammed al-Attabi's office at the main Saudi consulate. Tubaigi began to cut Khashoggi's body up on a table in the study, and there was no attempt to interrogate him. They had come to kill him. The Turkish pro-government newspaper Daily Sabah reported on October 18th that neighbors to the consul's residence had observed an unusual barbecue party, which the paper suggested might have been a smoke screen to cover the smell from the incineration of the dismembered corpse. We've been living here for 12 years, but I've never seen them having a barbecue party. That day, they had a barbecue party in the garden. The Wall Street Journal published reports from an anonymous source that Khashoggi was tortured in front of top Saudi diplomat Mohammed al-Attabi, Saudi Arabia's consul general. Reuters reported that al-Attabi left Istanbul for Riyadh on October 16th. His departure came hours before his home was expected to be searched in relation to the journalist's disappearance.
His finger looking good. There was something in the news reports back then that he said that there was a rumor that he got cremated on the premises.
That was probably the barbecue party.
Yeah.
On October 20th, the Saudi Foreign Ministry reported that a preliminary investigation showed that Khashoggi had died at the consulate while engaged in a fight, the first Saudi acknowledgement of Khashoggi's death. On October 20th, Saud al-Qahtani and Ahmad Asiri were announced fired by Saudi Arabia for involvement in Khashoggi's killing. An anonymous Saudi official said Khashoggi had been threatened with drugging and kidnapping by Mar Mutreb, and had resisted and was restrained with a chokehold that killed him. Reuters cited a Turkish intelligence source and a high-ranking Arab with access to intelligence and links to members of Saudi's royal court, and reported that Saud al-Qahtani, the then top aide for Mohammed bin Salman, had been on a Skype call to the consulate while Khashoggi was held in the room. Qahtani reportedly insulted Khashoggi, who responded in kind, according to the Turkish source. Qahtani then asked the team to kill Khashoggi. Qahtani instructed, "Bring me the head of the dog." According to both sources, the audio of the Skype call is currently with Erdogan, the Turkish guy. According to Nazif Karaman, the audio recording from inside the consulate revealed that Khashoggi's last words were, "I'm suffocating. Take this bag off my head. I'm claustrophobic." The details of the transcript of the audio were described to CNN by an anonymous source. On November 16th, a Hürriyet columnist reported that Turkey has more evidence, including a second audio recording from the consulate where the Saudi team reviewed the plan of how to execute Khashoggi. He also reported that Turkish officials also did not confirm that Khashoggi was killed after they gave him a fatal dose of drug. They said that he was strangulated with a rope or something like a plastic bag. And then there's the investigation and the confirmation of death. This is a really long one, so we may have to go into. I think we'll go into a second part. With starting with the investigation into the assassination and then the disposal of the body.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was going to be this long, but
they were talking about it for about a month, man. It was popping up.
Yeah, 6 weeks. And then it goes away because it's no longer news.
Yeah.
Although it really is news because
the connections.
Well, I don't know if there's any connections, but it really is news in regards to what's going on and how fucking diabolical some people are.
And the fact they thought they could get away with it in this day and age of the internet. And
it's not just internet. Like somebody living next door said they never have barbecue parties out there.
Yeah.
This is the first time in 12 years that they had a barbecue party. All of a sudden, and it happens in the same week that a fucking reporter disappears.
I mean, this is pure speculation, but like, what if like they had people there eating real barbecue while they're cremating his body, and just to make it give off the impression that they're just having a barbecue, right? That would be creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. It would.
Yeah. That's, man.
Anyways, we have to move on.
All right.